Hello, hello, hello. Um, I want to keep my promise regarding adding to what we have learned. In this particular one, I want to pick one of those words that have been used severally. We've heard them. We might even have taught them to others. But maybe I'll just make fresh and ideas or concept stored up in that word. But that's not how I was taught. I was taught something that sounds different, makes me think different about it. But I'm going to share what I have found out as brief as possible. The intention is not to show you what you didn't know, is for us to actually accept this, embrace this concept that have always been there, but that's not what we were taught. I don't know if you were taught if you have been taught what I'm going to share now, then let this be a reminder. If not, just open up and then to confirm it to yourselves. Don't just take my word for it. Get a good Bible concordance or even your internet. Do a search on it. Find out the real original meaning and the concept behind it. I'm going to read for a start, 1 John chapter 4, verse 8. It says, whoever does not love does not know God, because God is love. If you do not love, you don't know God, because God is the very Agape himself. God is the very one who is the source of the kind of love we are to share. Let me read another one. John chapter 15, verse 17. This is my commandment, or my command to you. Love one another. Love one another. Now, some of the words used even in the New Testament as love are not the same spellings in the original, but they come from the same root word, agape. So it's true that it's God that is the source of it. But when it comes to implementing, like the one we're going to read now, John 15, verse 12 says, this is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you. So if we keep it as we were taught, or as I was taught, that only God has agape, then how are we going to be able to love others like he has loved us? That's one. He expects us to love just like he has loved us. We're going somewhere. And then in John chapter 3, if you get to John chapter 3, you will see it talks about, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son. Now, what kind of love is he talking about? Still from that same root word, agape. Now, what is this agape? Like I mentioned, we were told that only God can show agape. Even though we are to express agape, it was not explained. That is something that we can also offer to others. So let's bring it to the level where we can really understand. This kind of love is actually to have value. It's actually to have someone in high esteem in your heart. Place that person in high esteem. Not now, it's not talking about placing the person on a pedestal, but in high esteem. To love according to this word has to do with esteeming the other person, having a high value for that person. Let me also mention that you could agape something or things. There are people who agape their dogs. There are people who agape their cats. There are people who agape their vehicles, their toys. They just place them in very high esteem. They have very high sense of value. Every time they think about it or see it, they have very high value for those things. Now, that kind of love, God expects us to extend to others and not think of degrading them, devaluing them. So it now makes more sense to me that when we're talking about love, we're talking about value, the sense of value you have for that person, the esteem, the sense that you have that this person is of high esteem in my heart. Now, if it is in your heart, you're going to act it out effortlessly. The moment you begin to catch yourself beginning to struggle to generate that kind of love, begin to take pleasure in this person as somebody that is of very high value to you, you need to do something about it as quickly as possible. This is not the place I want to take us through a Bible study, but if you read a lot of places in the New Testament that refers to the word love, the root word is agape, which God himself is the very love we're talking about. God is love. God is agape. So it's used in various places as, to love, to wish well, to take pleasure in, to long for. It denotes the love of reason, high esteem, value. Okay? So that's what I want to remind us. You can choose to love. And one of the things that enhances and increases the love for a thing, for someone, it's the amount of attention we pay to that person, is to hold that person dear in your heart, whether the person is nearby or not, is that in your heart, the very thought of that person stirs up an emotion in you or a feeling. This is what we are expected to do. Now, let me take us back to John chapter 3. John chapter 3. I will read first and foremost verse 16, and then we'll read verse 19. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son. That is the word agape there. God so agape the world that he gave his only begotten son. He so valued the world. He so much placed the world in high esteem. Now, it's not just talking about the physical, what he's talking about the people in the world. That he gave his only begotten son. Reason? So that whoever, that should tell you that that's the word he's talking about. Whoever believes in him shall not perish, but have eternal life. So much to unpack there. But let's quickly jump to verse 19. Verse 19 says, this is the verdict. Light has come into the world, but people, that's God's main concern, is people. It's the people that is the world. But people loved, please take note of that, darkness instead of light, because their deeds were evil. Now, this is where the explanation needs to be given. If agape was only confined to God as the only one who generates love, because it's all pure and all that, this word, you need to check it up. That word in verse 19. Let me check that for you. This is the verdict. The light has come into the world, but men love, and check it out. It's from the same root word, agape. But people blessed the things of the world. They preferred, they esteemed the darkness rather than the light. So if agape was only about purity and all that, why then would people? So it's more of the value. People value the darkness rather than the light. People place the darkness in high esteem rather than the light. So that's what it is. That's the true meaning of the word agape. Now, this is not to go into the nuances of it, but in a very general sense, human beings can generate agape because it has to do with value. They can place someone in high value, can place someone in high esteem, or place something, place a thing or an animal, anything in between. So it is a thing of choice. You can choose to love God as a matter of choice. You decide, I'm going to place God and his word in high esteem. I'm going to place my spouse in high esteem. You do that knowing that you are adding value to that person, not just that the person is of high value in you. And many times you are able to see the value somebody has for you by the expressions in the looks, the expression in the attitude. The moment you begin to think this person is of no value to me, or is of no worth, it affects the way you look at that person. Even your body language gets affected, because the moment something comes from our heart, our bodies pick up without being able to resist. That's why somebody gets you angry, it affects your chest, your physical heart. So what do we have to do with this? It's going to be something we choose to do. It's going to be something we are committed to doing. It will take commitment. The the feeling of the first day, for it to become consistent and even increase, will take commitment. You know, the first day you hugged your spouse, the feeling, for it to be the same like that day, you need to work on yourself, because emotions have to do more with where your attention is that particular time, and all the anticipations and all of that, they come into play. It's more of an emotional thing. But if it is to be a deep-seated feeling, it is something you have to work on. It's something you have to decide. It's something you have to choose. There will never be a time that your spouse will not offend you, but don't keep the records for reference. That's why part of this life is forgiveness. You have to be forgiving. You have to also make sure you make yourself of high value. It's not just the person thinks of you of being of high value when you are not. You have to work on yourself and make sure what you are putting into the relationship, that you are perceived as someone of high value. Today I got reminded, marriage is a free enterprise. If you choose to be a godly person in marriage, it's you that is making the investment, it's you that will enjoy the dividend. So if you think that the level husband or wife is enough to make you want to do things your own way every time the world revolves around you, and you do it your own way, you have no regard, you are not sensitive anymore. Instead, you become very touchy, very highly inflammable. Well, that's what it is also. Very combustible. You can explode anytime. You need to work on yourself, so that the very thought of you in the mind of the other person stirs up that value. You can enhance it. And that's why we have to choose. You decide, I'm going to hold my spouse in high esteem. This is a valuable person to me above every other. By the way, if you are making progress and you are discovering your spouse is not, at some point you get tired. So it's a wise thing to invest. Now use wisdom. Don't be braggadocious. Don't do it just to put yourself out there. You know, make sure as God gives you wisdom, you take your spouse along. It could be the man, it could be the woman. Make sure you create the room. Make sure you allow the space for the other person to develop himself, herself. At some point, you will get tired, and that brings the very value of marriage. It's better for two. Two are better than one. When one is down, the other will lift the one that is down up. So that's where I'm going to stop with this. I believe that this will incite you to want to know more. And it will challenge you to go and find out more for yourself. Get a good Bible dictionary or concordance, and then check where you see the word love. Everything is not about what God does or God forces it in you. When he saved us, his love was shed abroad in our hearts. When we surrendered ourselves, when we got born again, his love was shed abroad in our hearts. For that to continue, you have to keep working on yourself. And that's how it is. For us to keep enjoying that feeling of love, we have to invest into ourselves. We have to uphold the other person in high esteem. You have to see the other person the person is very valuable to you. Now, if you choose not to do that, there's nobody who is going to force it into you. Nobody will. And as far as I know, it will take two to agree to continue to work together. One person deciding, no matter what you do, I'll work with you to the future. It will not work. If it works, it won't last until there is agreement. For two cannot work together except they agree to take the journey together. Well, God bless you. And I look forward to seeing you in our next meeting. Please go through the video again. You may hear something you didn't hear the first time, the second time. And the third time you will hear something you thought you heard. You will really hear it the third time more than you heard the second time. That's how it is. The more you listen to a particular message, doesn't matter how inspired, the more you listen to it, the more you stand to gain. So it's for you to make that choice. I want this thing to work. I want this thing to work. When it has to do with godliness, people want God to force things on them. When it has to do with what they want to achieve, they make up their mind and they get committed. I want us to make up our minds and get committed. This will work not just for me, for our children, our children's children. We want to leave a godly legacy. God bless you and talk to you again soon. Bye for now.